So I'm a representative of the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I'm on faculty there. I'm an associate professor too in our critical studies program, which includes the humanities, writing, service learning, art history, the natural sciences. And I'm here today to talk to you about the topic of food waste and art and design. And as I said earlier, this is a conversation about multimodal classroom spaces. It's also doubling as a case study from a hybrid course that explores MIAD's industry leadership potential in the development of food studies and food XD or food experience design programming. So the question, of course, leading us off here is why food? In my past work, I was the director of curriculum and program design for the Culinary Institute of America's Food Business School. I'm a former dean of the CIA. And this is part of the copy that I helped write and create as we were launching that degree program. And it simply says, food is everybody's business, right? It does sustain our bodies. It does define our cultures. It certainly feeds our senses. However, jumping down to that last paragraph on this slide, our food system is imperiled, and that presents a multi-generational challenge that demands a different breed of leader. So why MIAD? Well, at MIAD, we build different types of leaders. We create thinkers and doers. Our students come to us asking the question, what's possible? They do develop real solutions. They are meeting real needs. And I'm going to share a little bit about how that's actually been applied in the course that I designed and teach and am using for this hybrid case. So why now? A very important question. This is copy from the About page at Food Tank. You can find more at foodtank.com. They are a global initiative that's really working to solve the problems that we see in the food system. And they say simply, our food system is broken. We do need to work together. We need to collaborate. We need to think differently in terms of how we're going to resolve that issue. So I did develop a course on food waste challenges and solutions for artists and designers. I'd like to share a little bit of information about the course structure, provide examples of some of the outcomes from that course, actual projects and concepts that have been created. And then, as I said, share a little bit more about the community impact and how this teaching experience is outside the classroom, but also very much oriented to traditional learning. So the topic of the course is fighting food waste, right? We know a lot about food waste. We hear plenty. One of the things that I think is most striking, and this comes from the course description that I wrote, is that in the US alone, more than 40% of the food grown goes to waste, and that's often before it even reaches the table. So 40% is wasted before it even comes into our homes. And the percentage and just sheer volume of waste that occurs in our homes is astronomical. So one of the challenges that this class attempts to address is how do we grapple with the fact that we are wasting that much food, right? That farms are spending $218 billion a year in the US growing, processing, transporting, and then disposing of 52 million tons of food that never gets eaten, that goes to waste. And there's an additional 10 million tons discarded or left unharvested, not gleaned off of farms. Meanwhile, 1 in 7 Americans is food insecure. So the participants in my course act deliberately. They choose clarity as a communication style, which is sometimes difficult to achieve just on its own. They practice empathy through design thinking processes, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But they also engage in collaboration, negotiation, and inquiry on the level of citizen activists, citizen scholars, creators, doers, people who make things. And as I say here, they're bringing those hallmarks of design thinking and embedding them into the work that they're already doing as illustrators, digital storytellers, fine artists, graphic designers, interior architects, crafters, fashion designers, or industrial and product designers, but most importantly, as thinkers, doers, and members of intersectional communities. So this course serves to strengthen their visioning, their planning, their execution capabilities. But again, it also supports the active teaching beyond the curriculum by creating real world opportunities for these students to engage with the classroom as what I like to think of as a catalyzing space for research, learning, and action. So again, I mentioned design thinking. This is the process that we use. There are many interpretations of this process, but we do start by building empathy. We make a common language through the act of definition. We create concepts. We dream big. We brainstorm. They ideate. They decide on the topic of their choosing. They build prototypes of concept, theoretical models, oftentimes designing real tangible goods, and then they test them. The idea is not to create anything necessarily that could immediately go to market, but I will share that several of the solutions that students in this undergraduate program have developed have gone on to become either the catalyst for a small business or startup, or have been utilized in other ways by existing organizations attempting to solve this challenge. So I'm going to share a few sample student projects with you. Again, just a reminder, these are at the undergraduate level. The students in my class are juniors typically, and this is their third year in the program, which is a 4-year program. And this is before they embark upon their capstone thesis for their major. So the students at MyAd take 4 years of humanities and writing courses. And so we see all of the majors, all of those that I listed earlier: industrial design, product design, illustration, animation, fashion design. There's fine arts. A myriad of possibilities awaits anyone who wants to study creative or artistic or design options at MyAd. But these students are in their junior year, so they've yet to create the capstone thesis for their major, but they're treating this almost in some ways as a sort of capstone thesis course. And this builds skills that they have said helps them in the preparation of their major thesis as well. So these are some examples, as I mentioned. I'll walk you through what they are and invite you to reach out to me if you have questions about anything later. I have included, as I mentioned, several ways to connect with me and to provide feedback. This student was shocked to discover the volume of citrus peel that is being wasted and the volume of orange juice containers that litter our landfills. So they created two things as their product component. One is an app, and it's based on research that they did into using citrus peels to create fragrance, to create health and body aids, to create cleaning solutions, how to use the sort of naturally occurring acids and all of the sort of, lovely smells that come from citrus peels to keep us clean, to use more organic approaches to cleaning our environments. But this student also created some better packaging for biodegradable and recyclable materials for orange juice. So kind of a two-sided approach, the actual peel and then something that we consume. This student took an approach with sort of like the minimalizing movement, right? The capsule wardrobe is something you might have heard of. This is a capsule meal plan. And so they are using social media to encourage people to shop according to need, to not buy more than you can use, but also to leverage budget-friendly ways of doing that. And they've done this with some, again, catchy social media. You see in the upper right corner, a bell pepper, unappreciated in its prime. So if you have a bell pepper that's going bad and you click on that post, you'll find 4 or 5 different ways that you can use that bell pepper that keep it out of landfills. Even if sometimes we accept that part of what we need to do with food waste is to compost. The second sort of image there on the lower right corner, a head of lettuce turned zombie. So how do you keep your lettuce from going bad? How do you preserve some of these things? Oftentimes what the students discover in their exploration and in their research is that the number one problem is people not knowing how to store or use or assess the freshness or the viability of produce. Tomatoes are one of the largest wastes that we have in households. And so they're being curious, they're creating opportunities, but they're also working on that empathy piece, making sure that no one feels that they're being stigmatized or shamed, that we approach this with kind of a culture of fun and creative play. Here's another example. Like I mentioned, we have a fashion design major at MyEd. And so this student is focused on using food waste, eggshells, beet skins, all kinds of things to create future pigments. So pigments at MyEd that rely on sustainable choices utilizing food waste could be used in the dyeing of cloth and the making of clothes, or it could be used in paints. Different types of materials used for art. It's not shown here, but I have a student who was in this class in a previous year, and she also happened to work as a server at a place that served unlimited mimosas for brunch, and every weekend would have countless, champagne bottles. And so she started taking them with permission of her employer, of course, ground down the glass, used the glass, created jewelry, did the types of things that you might not think of immediately. But food waste can be fashion. So whether it's, jewelry made from champagne bottles or pigments made from food waste, the students are thinking creatively about how to do something that impacts their field in a positive way that also has an impact in solving the problem of food waste. This is a student in product design. We were talking about space, and so they've created a green planter with a composting and hydration kind of component built in. The idea is that this could sit in your office, it could sit in a small room, anywhere where you can create either grow light environments or sun according to the crop. But the idea here is to grow more in less space. And so they actually built a prototype for this. And this is an image of that prototype. Here's a student who took upon themselves the challenge of our sometimes laziness when it comes to issues of food waste. They did some research and did some personal interviews and discovered that one of the number one spots that they were finding, or that their colleagues and friends and their interview subjects were finding waste, was in the back of the refrigerator. How often does a container or a leftover or something get kind of shoved to the back as new things come in? So they created a simple solution, and it's called the fridge pull. And it's a section in your refrigerator that's designed to kind of keep things fresher a little bit longer, but the shelving pulls right out so that you can see very clearly, unencumbered by things like cheese drawers or egg cartons, what you have to use so that you don't let it go to waste. Here's a student that was talking about, kind of the ways in which we shop, whether we're on our way to work or home from school or home from work, and how the reusable bags are certainly helpful, but they don't often provide us with solutions that allow us to do our shopping and keep it sort of like within the scope of what we can actually use without compromising freshness or safety. So they have food safe refrigerated containers, dry goods containers, all kind of built into this collapsible modular bag system. And the idea is that you would use that so that you could do more fresh green shopping at your market or your local grocer on a more regular basis to avoid waste from things sort of sitting and, again, going to rot. This student was talking just a little bit about the stigmatization that sometimes, impacts people who might go and get a Happy Meal or something like that. So they turned the Happy Meal model on its head and said, here's that little lunchbox. We've all seen it, right? Kind of open it up. But why not have it be something that we can send people ugly veggies? So veggies that might otherwise be tossed aside, the kinds of things that could be gleaned from a farm field or are simply not selling because they don't look the way we think an apple should look. We don't look the way that, a banana should look. One of the students in my current iteration of this course is actually creating a series of plushies, kind of like a Squishmallow, if you've ever seen one of those. And Jelly Cats, I think, is another brand that creates these. But instead of like the perfect little avocado or the happy little tomato, they're making the brown banana. And they're getting people used to the idea of seeing ugly fruit as cute too. And each little item, each plushie will come with its own recipe or an encouraging quote, something that kind of normalizes this idea that we should feel just as comfortable with our ugly produce as we do with our, branded packages for any other kind of food provider. This student is in product design and created a polymer packaging from dehydrated orange peels that they baked, slow dehydrated, ground down, mixed with a mushroom resin, and then created a biomimicry packaging component that was organic, natural, and fully biodegradable, and stronger than the plastic alternatives, and more durable and more enduring than some of the things you may have seen made out of corn cellulose, with far fewer hours of actual energy being used to create that solution. This is Mended Mango. This is a brand that you may have sort of encountered its analog. So if you've ever shopped at Farmer's Fridge or any of these other wonderful sort of fresh salad kiosks in places like, office buildings or airports, Mended Mango, however, is taking fresh food that is on the verge of rescue. So rather than, taking lettuces grown for creating the salad, they're engaging with local restaurants, with local food providers and saying, hey, what do you have too much of? What's going to go bad? And then they create solutions and put them in healthy vending machines so that people can get good, nutritious food that would otherwise fill our landfills, for a fraction of the cost. And they can eat healthy, but also know that they're doing something good for the environment. One of the resources that we use in this class is the documentary Wasted, which was narrated by Anthony Bourdain. And all of the students that I've ever had in the class and the years that I've been teaching it find themselves surprised by the statistic and the data that's shared that a head of lettuce inside a plastic bag in a landfill takes 25 years to decompose. So when they hear that, and many of them are not yet 25 years old, and they think about ways that they can build an impact, creating something edible and consumable out of food that otherwise might go into a landfill is a high priority for them. This student is sort of appealing to this idea of branding in marketplaces. So you may have seen sort of the Hawaiian shirt of the Trader Joe's, or the bright blue of a Best Buy. And so what they're trying to do is partner with local grocers to create a sense of join our fight, not my store, grocers that would take a pledge to sell appropriately environmentally sound merchandise that advertises these things also, but also uses that as a campaign for demonstrating their commitment to not wasting food, not putting food down the drain, saving your money, saving your food, and partnering with your local grocer. Because as we discover when we use the resources available to us, the retail markets, the grocery stores, there's so many points along that sort of consumption process and the chronology from, planting to harvest to consumption to disposal, where we can intervene. And so they decided to focus on groceries and local groceries that are partnering with farms to provide local produce and sourcing that occurs in ways that support the local economy. I hope that my presentation has given you an insight into some of the things that we're doing at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, how we're using a course on food waste challenges and solutions for artists and designers to jumpstart bigger programs. Hopefully you learned something new about opportunities to solve the issue of food waste or food insecurity in your own communities. But I welcome your feedback. I am looking for, your honest assessments, anonymous feedback, raise your questions, share your ideas. All opinions are welcome. Please feel free to share this presentation with whomever you think might be of interest to explore. And here's a QR code to a Padlet to provide, again, those anonymous comments, questions, concerns, ideas, invitations to collaborate. I'd be delighted to see any and all of those things come through. Thank you so much for your attention. I look forward to seeing all of your presentations in the conference, and I'm really grateful to AMPS for providing this space for us to look at things like architecture, media, politics, and society in new and interesting ways. Thank you.